Good afternoon, everybody. A really warm welcome to Kirklees Council Children's Scrutiny Panel on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 20th of October 2021, starting at 2:15 p.m. Just a reminder that this meeting will be recorded for archive purposes, which can be caught up later on. This is a first for Kirklees. This is actually a hybrid meeting. So we have a small group of us here in the council chamber at Huddersfield Town Hall, and panel members and officers joining us online from their offices and from their homes as well. So and hopefully everyone will bear with us if there's a few teething problems with the way that we run the meeting, but we're hoping it's going to work really well. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. So thank you, panel members. If we can keep our cameras on throughout the meeting, that just makes it easy for me to see when people are indicating to speak. And officers, if you could put your cameras on when you're presenting, or you want to speak. If you want to speak, officers, as well, if you put your camera on, that makes it really easy for me to see that that's likely to happen. And officers, you can introduce yourselves when you for your first item. So just going to do a quick round of introductions, so everybody knows who's on the panel this afternoon. So I'm Andrew Marchington, Kirklees councillor and chair of this particular panel. Tony?
Tony Bromley, volunteer co-optee.
Paul? Councillor Paul White, panel member.
Gail O'Neill, volunteer co-optee.
Jackie?
Councillor Jackie Ramsey, panel member.
Linda?
I'm Linda Summers, I'm a statutory co-optee.
Richard?
Richard Smith, Councillor for Kirkburton Ward and panel member.
And Elizabeth?
Councillor Elizabeth Reynolds, panel member.
And we've received apologies this afternoon from Councillor Joshua Sheard. Got any other apologies, Helen? No, fine, thank you. Right. So that's item 1, the membership of our committee. Item 2 is minutes of our previous meeting, the one held on Wednesday, the 15th of September. Panel members, can we approve those as the correct record of that meeting? That's fine, thank you. And are there any questions or comments on those minutes that won't be addressed during the meeting? That's fine, thank you very much, everybody. Then item 3, panel members, have any of us got interest to declare on any of the items this afternoon? That's no. Admission of the public. All of our items this afternoon will be held in public. If anything needs to be considered in private session, then we will move the appropriate motions to do so. But I don't imagine that happening this afternoon. Petitions and deputations. Have we received any petitions or deputations this afternoon? We haven't. And any members of the public asked to ask questions, then they haven't. Right, so fine. Right, so we're on to item 7, which is the new elective home education policy. About 2-3 years ago, Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel had an ad hoc scrutiny panel looking into elective home education, led by the previous chair of this panel, Councillor Carl Burke, and a number of us were involved with that. And it's interesting this afternoon to have a presentation on to see how what progress has been made with the council's elective home education policy and that. So who's doing the presentation? Diane. So I'm going to ask Diane Yates to lead on that presentation this afternoon, and there'll be opportunities. I think we've got a few questions on the report, Diane, for you on that. Thank you. So thank you, Diane.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Diane Yates. I lead on elective home education for Kirklees. So I'm here to talk to you today about the new EHE policy and the guidance documents. You will have seen that has now been approved by Cabinet on the 5th of October. First, I'd like to start by saying that we've really welcomed the work that Ad hoc Scrutiny Panel have undertaken regarding EHE. We found that really helpful in helping us to shape our EHE offer to families. And as a result of that, we do now have a dedicated EHE team who are really passionate about developing positive relationships and working with families. And we're committed to continue evolving on good practice and build on good practice. In producing the new policy, we looked at many other local authority policies to draw on the positives, as well as taking into account the DFE guidance and the relevant legislation. So whilst in draft format, the policy was made available to parents and schools with an invitation for them to make comments. And as a result of that, we took on board many of those suggestions. And we're really happy now with the policy and believe it is respectful to families who home educate. And it provides us with a really strong framework to underpin the work that we do. The policy is set out so that it outlines the rights and responsibilities for parents and children, as well as the local authority and school responsibilities. There are two separate guidance documents that accompany it. One is an information for parents guidance, and that includes frequently asked questions section. So it aims to provide advice and guidance to parents who are home educating or maybe considering home educating for the first time, and that's their intention is to help them make a more informed choice. There is also a further document which is around flexi schooling arrangements. We do sometimes have requests for advice from schools and families around flexi schooling. So this document is quite a comprehensive document that gives advice and guidance to schools around that particular subject. So as well as the production of the new EHE policy, ad hoc scrutiny panel have made a number of other recommendations. So work is continuing with these, and we are keen to continue to make progress, and we are coming back to provide you on a further update on those in December.
Thank you, Diane, for your presentation. Panel members, questions or comments on Diane's presentation or the report? Jackie?
Thank you very much. I read it and thought it seemed like an excellent policy. It seemed very clear. It seemed if I was a parent, I would know what was expected of me. So my question isn't specifically about the policy, but it's about how many, what percentage of children do we actually have that have chosen to educate, that parents have chosen to educate at home, and how many of those are flexi school, are having a flexi school option, and is there a difference in the percentage that have got special educational needs or disabilities between those two? It's just, I often think that parents choose to educate at home because something in the school system isn't working for them, and I just wanted to understand from an equalities perspective really whether or not we're right. I mean, I love the policy, but I'm just checking.
Joanna, you wanted to come back in on that yet? Yeah.
I think as Diane's indicated, we are due to come back with some further information. This is really about the policy. I think you asked some really good questions, Councillor Ramsey, and I think we'd really like to bring some analysis back. There's an awful lot of scrutiny nationally by Ofsted, absolutely, because perhaps as a result of the pandemic and other reasons, there is a higher number of youngsters that are electively home educated. So there's been some wonderful analysis being undertaken by Diane and Diane's team, and I think we need to be able to come back and present that to you. So Diane, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've got all that analysis just in front of us this afternoon. Is that okay though, if we bring it back? Diane, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, what I will say regarding flexi schooling, it's a very, very small number. I think it's probably less than 5 children. So, and quite often that's used as a kind of a reintegration plan into education for some families. So the number is very small.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Joanne and Diane. I think we would appreciate some more detail coming back in December. So yeah, just go back to you, Jackie. Do you want to? Is that? Yeah. Yeah. Fine, thank you. Okay, I'm going to bring Elizabeth in and then Linda. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Hi there. Just I appreciate what Jackie said as well. The whole set of documents is really comprehensive, and it was lovely to actually think that somebody had thought about all those things. The thing that I thought was needed questioning really was the mental health of the child. It's not mentioned specifically because I think there's a focus on suitable education. Now I think that's a difficult one to assess anyway. But I just wondered, is the mental health of a child considered during that assessment of whether or not the education is suitable? Because if the child is not thriving in the same way, they might be academically, being okay, but socially or otherwise, it might not be working quite as well. And I just wanted to make sure that the same assessment was put on all types of education, really, not just those at home.
Okay,
but that was a bit muddled then. But kind of what assessment is done of the mental health, and how does it apply?
Yeah, okay, so I can answer that question in the context of elective home education. So with all children, we treat them all individually. So when we're speaking to families, we're talking about their child and their child's particular needs. What we do find is that there are children that are taken out of school because of mental health concerns. And for some of those children, being at home has reduced anxiety. It's one of the things that we've found out. Another thing that I would point out as well is that we have got some families that are saying to us right now that their child has experienced mental health difficulties, and whilst at home their anxieties are reduced, but they would like to consider returning to education at some point because they recognise that there are things that school will bring them around things like socialisation. So it really depends on the child, and it really depends on the conversations that we have with parents. What we're really keen to do is work with parents and have those conversations together to consider what it is the family that actually need, rather than us assume that something needs to be done. We talk it through with them.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Elizabeth, are you follow up on that, or?
Yeah, just briefly, really learning from the experience of home education, and actually it would be, I think, really useful if that information was sent back to schools. The difficulties that a few have with school environment is actually there's more children involved in that than I think the EHE programme shows, and I think that's probably because of the availability of being able to do the accessibility of elective home education is more difficult. There are a lot of children out there with mental health issues caused partly by the environment of school, and I think we could learn quite a lot from the elective home education.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Just got a question about exams, and then I'll bring Richard Smith in. So, one of the things that the ad hoc scrutiny picked up was about the availability of examination centres for children and young people wanting to take post-16 exams, and it seemed to be really difficult. Dan, I don't know if there's any update at the moment on how we might be able to make sure that children who are electively home educated have access to GCSEs and BTECs and other public examinations?
Yeah, firstly, we do acknowledge it has been really difficult for families wanting to access local provision, and I think it's important to point out that it's not necessarily an easy thing for schools to be able to provide that. It's quite a complex issue. There are things to consider around access arrangements. If a child has a learning need, they might need additional support, such as a reader and a scribe. And there are different exam boards that different schools use. So it is quite a complex situation for schools. However, we are keen to resolve this, and we recognise the importance of families being able to access exam facilities locally. And currently we are in negotiations with a Kirklees provider, and we anticipate being able to have an offer in place by the end of the year. So in regards to, sorry, it's echoing back at me. In regards to information about this, what we intend on doing as part of the scrutiny recommendations, we are updating and reviewing the website. So there will be a section on there that talks about exam provision. It will give information around things like how to obtain a unique learner number, which is something we can support with. It'll have access to past papers and the links to all the various exam boards. So that again is in the pipeline, and the new updated website will be available quite soon.
Thanks, Diane. That's really appreciated. Richard, you got a question or a comment?
Thank you. Yeah, 2 or 3 points really. Firstly, I think it's a well-written document, and I think it's easy to understand. And I think it's a good piece of work. Just 2 things really. Picking up on the mental health issue that's just been raised, I wonder whether I'm not sure how to phrase this, whether I'm right or not. Is the suggestion that some children are being educated at home as a direct result of issues at school? I'm not sure whether that was the inference from the previous question or whether that's actually the case or not. But if that was the case, I wonder whether there is. I wonder if these children are actually going to a more beneficial environment if they're being just schooled at home with 1 or 2 parents. I don't know whether it's a difficult thing to understand. But more broadly about mental health, if a child is taken from school and home educated, what sort of impact does that have on their social skills and things, especially if it's in a house where they're the only child, maybe with just 1 parent? I'm not so sure that's necessarily a positive thing for them. But I don't think that's necessarily our gift. But my other question, really, my main question was the parental rights and responsibilities here. That there are legal rights of parents to do this, and I noticed that when a parent decides to exercise those rights, there are quite a few responsibilities for ensuring that they provide the correct curriculum and various other things regarding engaging tutors, paying for things, etc., etc. So that's all good stuff. What I suppose I'm asking is, how does the authority ensure that those parental responsibilities are being met? I can't see any way of doing that if those children are being kept away from the normal school environment. I hope that makes sense as a question.
Yeah, I think it's important to note the local authority's legal duty is to act if it appears that an EHE provision is not suitable. So what we have done in the guidance for parents, I think if you refer to page 6, it kind of outlines the kind of conversation we have and the things that will include, and that looks at the whole child. It looks at the socialisation as well as the resources that parents may be able to use, the kind of philosophy families want to adopt. So there are different approaches, and we are respectful of that and aware of those. So again, it really always depends on those individual children and those individual conversations that we have with families. Where we find when we have those conversations that parents are saying to us that they do need some help, then we've got the team there to really be able to support families, and that might be for some children looking at returning to an education setting. It might be at being able to access early support or other services such as CAMS or advice around counselling, that type of thing. So again, it really does depend on the conversations that we have with the individual families.
Thank you, Dan. Richard, do you want to follow up on that or?
No, it's pretty okay, really. I suppose the only question would be, you've mentioned the things about how you assess the family environment. Is that done sort of periods after the decision has been made? I presume it's not just going to be done at the time when the decision is made. I presume there's going to be further checks throughout the child's school or educational career?
Well, we have a duty to maintain contacts with families minimally once a year. So some families, what we do is once we've made our initial enquiries about the home education provision, the vast majority, I have to say, are providing an excellent high quality education for the children. So only where it appears that there may be some concerns, we may follow that up with further contacts and perhaps make arrangements to sort of check in families a little bit more frequently. Beyond that, once we're satisfied that everything's okay, our contact would then be for an annual update to check how things are going and to make sure families are still enjoying their experience of home educating, and if things have changed maybe for children, which it sometimes does depending on the different stages they may reach at different age groups. Some families perhaps want to think about, you know, whether that's something they do want to continue with. And what we do find with the EHE families is that the numbers do fluctuate. We will have some families that home educate just for a temporary period, and it might be so that they want to await a school place where there's high demand or something like that, but they're committed and dedicated to providing an education in the meantime.
Thank you, Diane. That's great. Thanks. Panel members, any other questions or comments on the EHE report? No? Well, thank you very much, Diane, for your presentation this afternoon. We're looking forward to, I know you'll be back quite soon, the next meeting. But also thank you for all the work that you and your team do in supporting the parents who choose to educate their children at home. For what I mean, and the feedback we got from the ad hoc scrutiny from the parents we spoke to was quite positive about your team, and really appreciated that, and we hope that that continues. And again, as part of our scrutiny work, we're hoping to re-engage with some of those to see how, you know, see how they feel about the implementation of the EHE policy, just to corroborate some of the information we received. But thank you, Diane, all the best. Thank you, lovely. Thank you. Right, we're on to item 8, which is the work programme. Just a bit of feedback as we start this, which is part of our policy. So Dale and I attended the last corporate parenting board. I think, and thank you to Councillor Viv Kendrick, who's the cabinet member with responsibility. She chairs the corporate parenting board, and Dale and I both were able to ask questions on the number of looked after children. It was very interesting to hear Councillor Jackie Ramsey at one of our previous meetings ask questions comparing us to our number of statistical neighbours. So Kirklees has significantly fewer looked after children than some of our statistical neighbours, and there's questions around that. So Ophelia had done a piece of work on what has been done differently in Kirklees on the basis of Councillor Ramsey's question. And we use special guardianship orders quite significantly. That's where children are looked after by close family members. So they don't come in our number of children looked after, and that seemed to work quite effectively in Kirklees. So thank you, Jackie, for that question in that way. But there's a further piece of work that Ophelia is going to do around that, about actually looking, well, why aren't other local authorities using those orders? And perhaps if it's really good practice in Kirklees, you know, we get good outcomes for our children and young people, perhaps we could be encouraging others to do that. So there's another piece of work for that going on. I think the other piece of feedback from Corporate Parenting Board was about fostering adoption and looking the recruitment and retention of foster carers in Kirklees. We know that's having really good foster care placements for children and young people is really important in terms of stability and placing children locally where that's appropriate. And there was an ongoing, I think, a number of panel members have asked about that over the years, and there's some quite robust discussion about that. And one of the really good things about Corporate Parenting Board is that we've got a couple of members of the Kirklees Fostering Network are actually members of that board, and so you get that input from foster carers directly into the Corporate Parenting Board, and that was really good to see. And I think that's an really good example of partnership work at its most significant level. Panel members have made a couple of face-to-face visits. We visited the Valley's Children's Social Work Cluster. If I forget the name, Dale and I went to see that. That was really. So we met the manager of the Valley's Cluster, the two duty managers for there's 3 teams in the Valleys cluster, and we met some frontline social workers. And actually, there's a member of the family support workers there, but adult mental health team who's there as a partner to provide support to that team. So we get a chance to talk to them. So a couple of things that Scrutiny's picked up in the past was about caseload, and we spoke to frontline social workers and to managers about how they manage the caseloads. Caseloads seem to be significantly lower than they were when we were scrutinising this in the past, so that seems to be managing really well. The allocation of, it was really good to see about the allocation of cases. So working in the team, if somebody's got a particular specialism, then they might that might be allocated to them. If a colleague, somebody wants to develop their professional skills, they're interested in something, they can do that. They can look at perhaps a more complex case, a case that's got a particular value on it, but they got support from other colleagues around that. So it was really good listening to the team. And again, we asked about how comfortable people were working within Kirklees in that particular team, and there seems to be good. You know, people were happy to work with Kirklees, if that's the right words to use, and there's opportunity for professional development, and that was really good to see in terms of recruitment and retention. A couple of other items that we looked at, which is about data collection, the consistency of that, and how data is used. And there was some, this is one of the areas, so there's a weekly trawl of data. So social workers and managers know that's going to happen. The question is going to be asked every week. So people are aware of that. But the question was music to my ears as a statistician. I mean, I know some of us love numbers and love data, but it's the so what question. You know, every number that we look at as a panel, it represents a person, a child's life, a family's life, and the impact of that. And it's quite clear that in the Valleys team, they were asking those questions. What is the data telling us, and how can we get better outcomes for children and young people? So that, I think that was really positive. I appreciate that. I really like that. So there's evidence of data, change in the way the data has been looked at and the quality of the data that's been collected and but also how the data is being used. Partnership working, good practice. I don't know if Dale wants to feedback on it. We need to be careful. We were given a brilliant example of children's voice. So at one stage, before we sort of set out on our improvement journey, occasionally cases where we looked at and the children's voice was not being included. It felt a bit like a tick box exercise. So what we heard was one of the social workers there describing in some detail about how using children's voice was really important about getting the right outcomes for those children. So it wasn't just about it being a tick box exercise, it was about the value of doing that and seeing how it was really important. Dale, do you want to come in on that? We can't mention anything to identify the case, so just be careful about your feet. Yeah, that's
Thinking about the voice of the child, what impressed me most was that this was something that was consciously in the mind of the social workers that we talked to. They were also thinking about, how does this child see me? So they were putting themselves in the position of the child, which I thought was just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, thanks Dale. Yeah, there seems to be quite a lot of effort put into that, so it's the importance of doing that, and it seemed to be well done. And there's an enthusiasm for it, and they're seeing the importance of it. So that was really, really pleasing to see. So that was great. We've got thank you to Helen and Nicola for taking quite comprehensive notes at that particular meeting. So we got to later, but it was a really worthwhile exercise. So things were so good that we thought we'd like to go and see some of the other teams. So I think we have plans to see the team in Batley and the Dewsbury team we've been offered to see as well. So we can because we're looking at consistency across the borough as well. So we're really looking forward to going and doing that as well and seeing what's happening there. Okay. Yeah, the other visit we've had recently is we did a virtual visit to the weekly referrals. Oops, sorry. The weekly referrals meeting, and we were looking at that, so that we were there as observers, we weren't asking questions. So that's where a group of partners come together to look at cases, a group of cases. So we've got partners there from health, from education, from the police, as well as the children's social work team, various parts of the children's social work. And they were looking at, they've got a variety of cases referred by different organisations, and they were picking them out to look at, have the right decisions been made in that particular situation. And basically, people were opening themselves up to scrutiny from their peers, and that seemed to be quite robust. I think, Elizabeth, would you like to do, I mean, you were quite positive about that. Again, we can't refer to the cases, but if you just want to, just in general, about your feeling about that particular meeting.
Yes, it did come across as being a robust system, and I did question what happens if somebody is actually feeling uneasy about a case, but it doesn't come up in the random sampling. But there is provision there for any case to be brought up as well as those as part of the random sampling. So I felt quite heartened by that. The idea of supervision and support for each other was very much intrinsic to the way that they were making those decisions. It was really good to see.
Yeah. And again, at one of the face-to-face conversations, one of the partners was quite impressed that particularly the children's social workers were happy to open themselves up to that and I think the phrase I would use, open and accountable. So people were being open about the decisions that they were making, but were willing to be held accountable. And that was a feeling that would lead to better decisions being made and actually better outcomes for children. So that was children and young people. So that was really good to see. It was quite a long meet. It was really interesting observing that and to see the degree of engagement from people who are attending that meeting on a regular basis. That's a weekly meeting. That was impressive. It's really pleased to see that's happening each week. The meeting we had last Thursday, we went to see the front door team, some of whom we'd seen at the virtual meeting on Monday, so it's nice to meet them face to face. And again, it was we heard again about children's voice, and again see how important it was with really to get really good outcomes for children and young people, seeing the importance of it and the value of that. Again, we talked about data collection and corroboration, how that's used to get better outcomes. And it was a partnership. So we've got the teams are co-located. So we've got people from health and from adult mental health team and from the police, and early supporter there as well. So the whole team, partnership team there, and some really positive reports about the value of doing that and co-location. And I think the other question I asked was, do partners feel, does their contributions feel valued? So it's that sharing of professional expertise to get the best outcomes for children and young people. And somebody who's been involved in partnership working and young people's work for longer than I care to remember. It's a wonderful phrase, and it was who's best placed? Who is best placed to meet the needs of this child? And in the past, people might have been very protective about their work with children and young people, but there's a quite clear recognition that it might be somebody at school, it might be the teacher who's best placed to refer a situation or to lead on a particular lesson, or it might be a police officer, or it might be a health visitor. And that phrase, who's best placed, and it's sort of you breaking down those barriers, professional barriers, sharing professional expertise, but breaking down professional barriers to get the best outcomes for children and young people. So, I don't know if anybody else wants to give any feedback on the meetings that they've attended. Linda?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to the weekly referral meeting, which I observed too, really to echo what you said, but also to add that I thought we saw some really good examples of what we've identified as some themes we want to look at. So of partnership working, as you say, representatives there from police, from education, from health, as well as from various children's services teams. Also, I thought from the range of when they did the deep dive into some of the cases, the notes I'd scribbled showed that there were examples of referrals coming in from schools, from GPs, from police, from the ambulance service, from the NSPCC. So a really wide range of organisations engaging with the service. I thought we saw a good combination of a shorter piece on the data analysis, so a regular look at the weekly data and how that compared week on week to the previous week, but then the deep dives into some of the cases. That was a really robust challenge, with people being entirely open to thinking afresh about how they'd made their first decisions. I was heartened to see that when there had been a previous contact in relation to the same children, they went back and looked at how that had been dealt with as well, to see if there were any issues to be learned from that earlier case. And that they were also, as well as looking at the individual circumstances of individual cases, picking up some common themes that they were beginning to see, for example, about getting police support when that was needed in relation to dealing with some cases. So we were seeing some really good examples of deep dives into individual cases, as well as some gathering up of themes that needed to be escalated and taken forward elsewhere. And I think as well, it appeared to be a standing item in relation to each of the deep dives that they did, looking to see how the voice of the child had been captured. We certainly saw that it's a standard question on the information capture form that they complete, but it was reflected on during the deep dives of the cases. So I thought it was a really positive example of a number of themes of partnership working, use of data, and voice of child that we've identified from the scrutiny panel. It was very encouraging, I thought.
Thank you, Linda, for that feedback as well on that particular meeting. So again, we've got Helen kindly and Nicola sorting out some more visits for us. So panel members, if as and when Helen emails you out, you can respond to that. If you can make time, I know it's not an expectation that people will go to all the visits, but if occasionally you'd be willing to do that, and just to provide a bit of feedback to panel when we do that, that would be really appreciated. Sorry, Linda, bring you back in.
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to mention one other thing, because I also went to, and I think others did too, the information session around the Kirklees Families Together programme. And I mention it only because there was one particular aspect that struck me as interesting and was discussed certainly at the meeting I was at in some detail, that we as a scrutiny panel might want to keep an eye on. And it was around the structuring for this programme, around there being Kirklees divided up into 4 geographical areas, each to have its own Families Together area partnership board. And we were told that the tender was currently out for the organisations that were going to form these partnership boards, and that it would be part of the spec of how the provider was going to involve and listen to families, children, carers and others. And councillors that were in the meeting that I was also there were particularly anxious to understand how councillors would be involved in those partnership boards too. And I just wonder whether, on the theme of partnership, on the theme of listening to the voice of the child and the families, how these partnership boards develop could be something that we could usefully get an update on. My scribbled note says that they were aiming to start them in November, which is not that far away. So maybe there's something we could look at in 2 or 3 months' time as to how those have actually got established and how effectively they are working, because
Thanks, Linda. I think that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, I think we can include that on our. There's an item on the work programme on those family hubs. So if we'll pick that up at the briefing and see if we can get at this early stage, see if we can get an overview of that. That'd be really good. So thank you for that. Okay, right, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, I've got any other general comments on the work programme? No, that's fine. Right, I think that's it. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance this afternoon. Thank you, officers, for your presentation. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I will do. So, it'd be nice to look at the agenda for next meeting. 1st of December. So on the next meeting, which is on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 1st of December, 2022 at 1:30. So we've got feedback from Corporate Parenting Board. We've got a fuller feedback from the on elective home education, and that's on specifically on the recommendations that were made from the ad hoc scrutiny panel. And then we're going to have a discussion on the outcome of the recent Ofsted inspection. So, is that what we need to do? Yeah, fine. So that's that meeting. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance this afternoon and your questions, your comments, and your contributions. And thank you also for all the hard work you do between meetings as well. It's not just about when we meet in person or virtually. That's really appreciated. Can I just say a thank you to Phil, who's sat in the council chamber, who's been very ably helping us with our hybrid meeting. If anybody who's not able to stay briefly after the end of the meeting for some feedback on that to see how it's worked, if you could just pop an email through to Helen. Thank you to Helen and Nicola again for helping us very well with the hybrid meeting this afternoon. So our next meeting in public is on Wednesday, the 1st of December in the afternoon at 2:30 p.m. I look forward to seeing people then. Thank you. Oh, sorry.